What is up, everybody? This is Marshall Lee of DonkeyJawProjects.com and Marsh Comics on Twitter as well. By the way, I just wanted to say I noticed today that I don't have a lot of followers on Twitter because I never really used to use it before until I got banned from Facebook and Instagram. And now I use it all the time. So if anybody wants to go follow me there, go ahead and follow me there. But that being said, we're going to talk about conspiracy today and comics and a bunch of other things I think we'll get into. And who I'm going to talk about that with, it's going to be Mr. Luke Stone. How you doing, man?
Good. Thanks for having me on tonight. Looking forward to talking some comics and other stuff, man.
Yeah,
It's a
for
good
sure.
day. It's always a good day to talk comics, isn't it?
That's what I feel like, for sure. So while right in the beginning here, let's let people know a little bit who you are and what where can people find you?
Okay, well, my name is Luke Stone. I'm the writer and artist behind a book called Hybrids and Sons of Gods. I'm the artist for a book called Voodoo Nations that just is in fulfillment right now from Kickstarter. And I am the editor-in-chief of a company called Terraform Comics. So you can find out more about Terraform Comics at terraformcomics.com. But if you want to find out more about me, you can go to lukestonestudios.com. That's Luke Stone Studios with an S on the end. .com, and I've got my Indiegogo links up there, my Twitter links, my Facebook, and all that good stuff. So
Awesome. Yeah, and we have a link for the Indiegogo in the description, so you can go right to that if you like. There's also a link in the chat right now. I'll probably put it in again later. But let's actually take a look real quick while we're at it, and we're going to get into some other stuff soon. But let's take a look at this campaign you got going on here. Do you want to just talk a little bit about what this whole idea is, what it's about?
Yeah. So this is a concept that I started working on about 10 years ago, actually. It started from a conversation with a friend of mine. We were sitting around after a youth group meeting one night, and we just started having kind of this weird conversation about all the weird things that you find in history. You know, kind of a big fan of that, ancient aliens and all that kind of stuff. You know, the dude with the big hair.
Yeah.
Kind of into that stuff. And we started talking about how in Genesis chapter 6, there's this little tiny verse that talks about angels or sons of gods seeing the daughters of men, liking what they see, and then procreating. We'll just say procreating. And so the product of these unions was this creature called the Nephilim. And it turns out, you know, as we were having the conversation, you know, and we would oftentimes have these conversations. So like we'd come back with new information as soon as we found it. And one of the things that we learned is that not just the Christian Bible talks about it, but a lot of major world religions refer to something that's very similar to this. And so that became the kind of the launching point for this idea of what it might, like, you know, why people might have like some weird powers. So the idea is that the Greek gods have always been fascinating to me. And the connection between the Nephilim and the Greek gods, I had never in my life made until I started doing some research. And I found out that the writings about the Nephilim predate the Greek gods by about 1,500 years. And some people that are really, really smart actually think that those Greek gods are just exaggerations of real life Nephilim. And so I started thinking, well, what if the Greek gods were actually, you know, inspired by real life creatures? What if those creatures continued to, you know, sire children throughout, you know, generation to generation, and eventually that DNA watered down? And what if walking around right now, could be people that has a little bit of that kind of angelic or hybrid DNA within them, you know, that Nephilim DNA. And the idea was, well, then what if something caused that to wake up? You know, so instead of a recessive trait that would give you red hair, blue eyes, you could have a recessive trait that would give you godlike abilities, you know? And so that kind of became the core of the idea over the course of a few years, kind of researching, you know, how that could happen, you know, and just trying to draw a line between the ancient alien thing, the different bits of historical things that we have, the books that we have, and then this idea. But I just didn't want to write a story that was just about people that got superpowers. It had to be something interesting. And I have this rule: if you're going to do something, do it interesting. And so what we did is I started to develop this idea. And when I say we, I need to clarify there. When I say we, I mean me and my other personalities. I think that's what I mean, actually. What we did was we started to think, so what happens if that were the case? So what happens in this story is overnight people start to develop these godlike abilities, but no sooner do they develop these abilities, these people start to vanish. And we actually have to follow a group of heroes that's trying to find out who's taking these people, where are they taking them, and why are they taking them. So we wind up uncovering this massive super quote unquote superhuman trafficking ring, if you will, and unlocking some pretty sinister and supernatural elements behind it. So it does fall into a superhero comic book because, people have powers, but it's more science fiction and action adventure than it is anything else. So
interesting. Yeah. The thing is, somebody tweeted out, oh, this guy's got a Indiegogo and he's looking for people to talk to and stuff to get, promoted. I'm like, oh, well, let me go check out the Indiegogo. And I did. And I'm like, first thing I saw, like Nephilim and hybrid. And I'm like, yep, this sounds like a one for me.
Yeah, I often say it's the Book of Enoch meets Taken. That's really kind of what it is. I don't know if you've ever heard of that or the Book of Enoch or not, but it's basically there was this. He's quoted in the Book of Jude in the Bible. It's actually kind of funny, but it says that he was walking and then he was no longer there. Like the Lord just took him. So it was like one of the first people that would have been like raptured or something like that. And so, but there was actually 3 versions of the Book of Enoch because these are stories that were recounted by his family, and so they all cover a little different aspect of kind of pre-flood history, and it's kind of neat to read those books. Like they're really far out there. I mean,
especially the last 2. The first one, is really interesting. The last 2 is like, what's going on here?
it just goes. I mean, I don't know, like if it was just, Enoch was old or drunk, or if he's telling the truth. It's hard to say there. But it is pretty neat. It is pretty neat. Yeah.
Yeah, I think all these things, I don't really know 100%. I've definitely looked into all this as well. And I think that the last 2, it might be like different authors, it might not even be fully Enoch. I think they've even dated those last 2 as like way further out beyond, when the first one was written. So it's interesting.
Yeah, they think it was like grandkids or great grandkids. It was part of his family, they believe. With some help from other people, but yeah. So it's been embellished. I think maybe it's been embellished a little bit, or maybe they're just remembering the stories different. Maybe as Enoch got older. And I have this thing that I like to do. When I tell a story, sometimes it just needs a little work.
Yeah.
We just got to make it a little more interesting. And so maybe that's what he did. But still, those books, it created this kind of neat idea. And my friend, he was like, hey, I know you like doing comic books. You should make this a comic book.
Yeah.
And so I honestly, when I first started the process, I didn't know that anyone was going to be into this stuff the way that I was. I thought it was like, I'm just like this like geek and kind of a bit of a theology nerd. And I thought, like kind of those weird things and finding those old texts and reading them and stuff. I said, no one's really going to get into this. So when I drew the first issue, I was really surprised to find out that people were into it. And so,
couple of years, maybe at least a couple of years ago, it's probably still pretty good now, but like a couple of years ago, I mean, it was so fertile for this kind of stuff. Like if you look up Nephilim, like because I was doing YouTube videos, and at that time I was like looking into a lot of conspiracy stuff just because it's interesting to me. It's good fodder for stories and stuff, like as you have obviously even put to work here. And you know, anything about Nephilim would always just take off. Like people are just really interested in
Yeah.
in that subject matter. So
Well,
and I'm
yeah.
definitely interested as
And
well.
I think it's because of the connection with all of these kind of real world um, platforms, you know, like all these, you know, it's not just like one book, one religious text, but it's like several religious texts. And then it goes beyond that to where it's not even religious text, it's historical texts that refer to the Nephilim and
But yeah,
things like that, you know. And then some of the stories about the Nephilim, actually some of these individuals, they mirror or mimic some of the Greek god stories. Uh, Almost to the point where it's like, well, maybe that was the basis or inspiration for, you know, Zeus and all of these other kind of all these other characters and you know, and creatures and beings, you know. I know in one of the books of Enoch, it actually refers to like angels being with other animals, which creates these other mythical creatures that we're familiar with, like a centaur, or minotaur, a mermaid, you know, those kind of things. And it's like, well, that's weird, you know, because you gotta start thinking about, you know, the implications there. But yeah, so when you start following that thread, it starts to get really cool when you start thinking about, you know, that Atlantis could have been a real place, and
yeah,
you know, and all of those things. So
yeah. I think there's even you know, what's some people believe is like the first book ever like written, the Epic of Gilgamesh. Like there's threads in there too that, you know, some people think that he was maybe, if it was a real story, like that he was like a hybrid, I think, or
yeah,
part Nephilim or something like that.
yeah.
So yeah, it's really interesting how far it goes back. So I noticed on your you said, you talked about it here a little bit. You know, you said it was like with a youth group or something.
Yeah.
And I saw on your Twitter it said that you're a pastor. You probably don't know much about my channel, but you know, I'm pretty open that I'm a Christian. I'm also
Oh,
a
nice.
conservative. Two things that the art aren't very common in
Uh,
the arts, but
True, true. Yeah.
I seem to
So
get along with people anyways somehow. But so, you know, I'm just curious a little bit about your background with that. You know, being you're a pastor. Is that?
yeah, yeah. So I'm wide open about my faith and my conservativeness, if you will. So yeah, I'm a pastor. I've been pastoring. Actually, Sunday, yesterday, was
Hmm.
my 5-year anniversary as lead pastor here in
Yeah.
Jacksonville, Florida. Yeah,
Wow.
and so I'm okay with doxing myself when it comes to saying what city I live in, because it's the largest city in the United States by landmass. So good luck finding me. Uh, and if you do, yeah, I'll buy you a cup of coffee. You know,
There you go.
well done, well done. But no, so yeah, I pastor here in Jacksonville, Florida. Been here for 5 years. Lived here for October 5th will be my 6th year being here. Started out as youth and music, and so I'd been doing youth ministry since I graduated high school. And so it was, you know, one of those things where I wanted to make a comic book, but I didn't want it to be a Christian comic book. And so
Yeah.
maybe you disagree with me, but I think that most Christian fiction and Christian literature, Christian movies, things like that, I think they're a little lame. You know, they have a tendency to just be kind of goofy,
Yeah.
and they kind of either whitewash or downplay the kind of the complexity of the human condition in most cases. And I don't want to do that. But I did want to create something that maybe had a bit of my worldview in it and represented Christians in a more natural light. There was
Hmm.
this movie, 10 Things I Hate About You. And I remember there was this one scene where there's like the kids, like the Christian kids were singing some goofy hymn and just like getting all like into it, you know. And I'm like, I never did that as a Christian teenager. Like that was never did I do that? And but that's the world's representation of what we are, and I'm like, no, that's not true. So I just wanted to make a comic book that on the surface is just fun and kind of like that 90s action team comic, and then kind of below the surface, kind of deal with just the interactions with people and do it from a conservative faith background, taking that point of view and letting people be able to see that it's not, that we're not what the media wants everyone to think, that, middle-aged white Christian male. That's not who we are. But.
Yeah. Well, I you're definitely speaking my language with that stuff. I always refer to and it's not all of it either, but I refer to Christian music as corny Christian music all the time because there's so much stuff that's really corny. But there's some good stuff too. For sure. And it's interesting. Have you ever heard of Briangadawa?
The name sounds familiar, but I'm not real familiar.
He's a Christian filmmaker. And he was a director in Hollywood. I think he still is a director in Hollywood. He's done different stuff, but he also talks. He's got a YouTube channel. He talks about stuff Christian stuff in the media, and he also has this huge book novel series, and it's all it goes through the Bible, but it kind of goes in between the actual scriptures, like parts where there isn't really story, where there's gaps, and he kind of traces in it's fiction. He kind of traces what might be the Nephilim parts, that you don't really see a lot of in the Bible. It's only here and there. It's very rare that you see some, although there's some stuff that's in there that you just don't know because it doesn't say Nephilim, but they're talking about Nephilim in the Bible. But yeah, it's interesting. It's actually, he's pretty good at the writing and stuff, and he doesn't water it down or anything. And one thing that I really loved about some of his videos, he's got some different writing series and stuff like that. And one thing he talks about sometimes is, the Bible is rated R. People who make just different things, comic books, novels, movies, who are Christian, a lot of times they water things down because they're just well, we have, this morality, and we're trying to live up to a certain standard and this and that. I can understand the kind of the instinct to do that, but at the same time, real life is real life, and God didn't really seem to have a problem putting all the crazy stuff in there too. I mean, there's even arguments to be said that there's even maybe some X-rated material in there with Song of Solomon and stuff, because they don't actually, Song of Solomon doesn't actually the version we have isn't actually, it's translated in a way that's okay for people.
Well, it's even with some of the stuff that Paul says. So when Paul says, should we continue sinning so that grace can abound? And he goes, certainly not. So we put in certainly not, but the phrase that he would have used would have been more like a hell no. That would have been the more accurate translation. Hell no, we don't do that. That's stupid. And then when it says that, the greatest thing, our best things that we offer are as filthy rags. Mm-hmm. That term was actually, filthy rags was actually menstrual rags, is what that meant. Wow, and so it's there's some really harsh stuff there that if you said it from the pulpit, man, people really get on you. I kind of do that though. I kind of, I'm that's what it says. So we get in there, but even that, you go back to Judges, man, the whole Deborah and all of them. And there's this one story where one of the opposing leaders, they're friends, and so this lady brings him in, gives him more milk, lets him fall asleep, take a nap, and then runs a tent spike through his head, and pins his head to the ground. You know, just like these like really kind of wicked stories in there that you just wouldn't believe. And it's like, you can't teach that in Sunday school. But yeah, we have a tendency to do that. We have a tendency to, you know, to try to polite it up a little bit. But some of these stories, they weren't polite, you know, they weren't sweet. But it was real life. And I think it's neat to spend a little bit of time on those things.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be learned.
There's an argument to be said. There's almost every genre in there too. You know, there's horror. There's, you know, some of the most horrific things I've ever read are in the Bible. You know, there's suspense, there's thrills, there's drama, there's romance, there's everything. Everything is in there, you know, and it's pretty interesting. Even, you know, there's a logo that's right above your head over here on the video. Donkey Jaw Projects. That's my yes. You know, that's my little imprint, and I think you know, any Christian, if they really think about it, they could be like, oh, Donkey Jaw, that comes from something. Yeah. So you know, it's Samson is one of the least like what you would think of as a Christian or a good Jew or whatever figure in the Bible who was a hero in the Bible, you know?
Well, I mean, God said that David was a man after his own heart, and we have to understand what that really means, because David was a voyeur who let his obsession turn into a murderous affair.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is
that. He was judged for that.
Yes,
for sure.
Yes. Yeah. But it was always it was always David's like return to repentance, you know, that like, I'm broken, I'm no good. That's what it meant, you know, kind of like God's own heart. There's like, you know, he still was humble, even in his mistakes. You know, he was still a humble person who loved deeply, and in some cases loved the wrong people the wrong way. And you know, but
yeah. So I just want to acknowledge we got the chat going. We got some of our friends in here. My buddy Stinch is in here, Johan, Lane Vision Official, Dan, also known as Sideburns. I like this comment. Praise the Cosmic Chicken. It's Marsh. All right. Let's see what else we got. Frank dropped in for a minute. Thanks for hanging out with us. We got Anna here. She's had an interesting comment. We got Super Mario Evan. What's up? Anna says there are different denominations that tend to have their own flavors of practicing and worship. That is definitely true.
Yeah, there's actually a Church of Christ that doesn't use music at all in their worship services, which is really yeah, which is bad for the musicians, you know.
Yeah, well, probably. I mean, I could imagine some they might be like, music is of the devil. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe that's not their stance.
It's not really the thing yet, but it's the instruments and stuff can become a distraction. And, you know, I kind of agree with that, you know, but there's balance in everything. And I don't think one particular style of practicing worship over another is better. You know, it's just however you can kind of connect and stuff like that, you know.
You know, it's funny. I made a video a few years ago about how to be, what was it? How to be a Christian artist or something like that. Like, because, you know, somebody actually asked the question, like, how do you be a Christian in the arts? You know, because it's, you know, they tend to be of a whole different, like the people in the arts tend to be like more on the liberal side, more on the atheist side, or all kinds of different things. And a lot of times they're almost against, you know, the faith that I believe in, you know. And so how do you live in that world? So I made a video about it because somebody asked, and I got a comment today actually on it, and the person was saying like, they were trying to tell me to turn to Christ, and it's the end times, and I'm like, did you watch the video? Because I'm talking about being a Christian, like.
Yeah, like. I think that's also the problem. So yeah, I'm a pastor and I draw a comic book, and when people find out that the comic book is not a Christian comic book, they like freak out. And I'm like, well, let's think about it. Here's the problem with a lot of Christian material. they don't understand who their audience is. They will create something that they want to have for a lost audience, right? But how do they market it? They market it to a Christian audience. They put crosses on it. They say it's Christian material. They do all that stuff. And then what they do is they want it to reach lost people. So they'll just reimagine the gospel and retell the gospel in another way, right? Well, here's the thing. You and I are both saved, right? We're not going to be any more saved than what we are right now. Like we can be more sanctified and all that kind of stuff. That's a nice, hey, I went to theology. I'm going to use those words. Okay. I mean, I went to seminary. I'm going to use those theological words. So we could have, we're in a process of being better and better every day. I like to say trying to suck less tomorrow than I did today. Basically, that's what it is. So that's kind of what sanctification is, just trying to suck less tomorrow or suck less today than I did yesterday, however you want to put it. And the problem is that, like, we could have Billy Graham if he were with us right now. Like, we're not any more saved than he is. You're saved is kind of like a pass-fail thing. You're saved or you're not saved. There's not degrees of saved. Now, there's degrees of being set aside and sucking less, basically, or sanctification. But so why are we giving the gospel message to people who have already heard it and accepted it? Right. It doesn't make any sense, And I tell people as Christians all the time, like, that doesn't make any sense at all. Like, that's absolutely ridiculous. So if you're going to write stuff for a Christian audience, you should be working on sanctification discipleship. You should be teaching them through the medium how to interact with lost people, how to interact, like have family issues when someone might think differently, believe differently, vote differently than you do. And how are you going to be like the voice of reason and hope in difficult situations? How do you deal with the constant, like Paul says, I keep failing. I don't want to do those things, but I do those things. And the things that I do want to do, I don't do. How do you deal with that? How do you reconcile that? That's what Christian material should be like. And that could be totally marketed to believers. But if you're trying to do something for non-believers, then it should look like the least Christian thing that you have ever written. Because you're trying to give it to an audience, to give them the story and the content that they just don't, that they won't receive, when it's packaged with crosses and people in robes and things like that. And so, but that's just my thought on it.
I agree that, basically pretty much with everything you're saying. It is a little tough though, because as you're trying to, the sanctification process, trying to be a better person, or trying to suck less today than you did yesterday, as you would say, at the same time, and then you're writing something and you're like, I think what it really boils down to, in my opinion, is let the reality show for exactly what it is. If a character in your comic is going to say a curse word, like, that's the reality of the situation. I mean, you don't have to flagrantly like show like pornography in your comic, but you can allude to the fact that they just went into a tent and did something, like, or whatever it is. Like there's you could do all kinds of different things. And it's really, I think, one thing that happens, and it's funny, we're going to talk about conspiracy stuff, but then we started talking about Christian stuff. But like, it's like, I feel like when you're writing a story, you can't like censor yourself as you're writing the story. Like, you're not going to be able to truly express the thing you're trying to express if you're constantly like, oh, I can't do that because, I can't say a swear, or I can't, show sex or violence. That, you have to just kind of put it in there. You can go back and edit later if you want, but not only that, but then when you put it out to the world, like you said, like, it's not like you want to, okay, now that's my excuse to like do everything bad I want to do, like,
yeah.
So it's like this weird balance where I kind of understand why Christian creativity can be so goofy, because I think people don't know what to do in that situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's difficult to balance those things, because I mean, you get caught up in the, I don't I want to show what it was like, the process was like for me before my salvation, during, kind of the process of conversion, and then after my conversion. And uh, and here's where I call BS with a lot of people. Okay. They'll will point the finger as soon as they see some Christian material and it has a curse word in it. But man, I've heard people talk after board meetings or even in board meetings, and I've heard some stuff fly out of some really whoa, I'm like, you're not hiding anything. And the problem is when you try to say that you don't experience these things, these aren't struggles that you go through, then it just cheapens, for fear of being a bad example, we actually cheapen the testimony, I think. And so my goal with making a comic book was first and foremost just to be an entertainment. I wanted it to be entertainment, that everyone can enjoy, whether you're an atheist or a Christian, whether you're male, female, or trans, whatever, whatever you are, or whoever you are, or wherever you come from, whatever God you worship, you could pick up the book and you can enjoy it. And then below that surface, what I wanted to do was give people an opportunity to kind of see real life conversations played out and kind of real life dynamics with people, like a group of people that shouldn't be together, but they are, and kind of how the pace of life is faster for some people and slower for others, and just kind of show that, so that then people that are from these different backgrounds can have those conversations with each other. And then even below the surface, even more, if you really scratch and dig away, I wanted things to be allegorical, kind of like Tolkien or Lewis would have done with Lord of the Rings or Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, where it's telling some parabolistic story below the surface. And so that, if there's a root in there of some kind of hope or morality, where we see a hero that we want to be like,
Mm-hmm.
I think too much in comics, what happens is people want to strip away the heroes from being something that we should strive for and try to attain. And rather, let's humanize the hero. Let's bring them down to our level rather than have the hero there and then bring ourselves up to that level. We want to do the opposite. We want to bring the hero down. And so I actually, wanted to work on a book that did that, that set that kind of old school, this is the hero, this is what we're trying to attain. And then there's a story, there's a story, but it also tells a story underneath. So that's kind of the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I would totally agree with that. I think it's interesting. I keep bringing this up, but I guess I think it was Peter Samedi put this in a video at one point, somewhat recently, and it was a clip of Stan Lee, and he was talking about he's like, I do put messages in my stories. I put morality messages, but they're things that are pretty universal, like everybody can agree with it, for instance, with great power comes great responsibility. That's the obvious example, but there's other things too, with X-Men and different stories. And there's a lot that we can agree on, anyways, just as a human, as a human being going through this life. And then there's also some deeper things. And with any really great work, you mentioned Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, and I think even something like Star Wars, the classic Star Wars, some of these stories, there's more than just the surface. There's different levels. You can see it as just an adventure, on the surface, but that's what I like about those specific examples, like Lord of the Rings, Star Wars. You can watch it more than once, and obviously many people have watched or read these things more than once, and each time you can get new things, and each character kind of has kind of a new level of something if you really look into those different characters. I've talked about this a lot. Obviously Lord of the Rings is a lot about the hobbits, getting that ring to Mordor, but I mean, the story of Aragorn is amazing to me.
Yeah.
Like, the story of some of these other characters is like they all have their own journey, and you get to get into a lot of interesting territory philosophically, morally, and just with adventure as well, you know.
Yeah. And, I think that's kind of where, my worldview helps me to not only kind of put that morality in there, but to define the motivation behind morality, because it's different for everybody, and that's why I'd say, this is kind of general entertainment to start with, and then it kind of it goes beyond that. It's like, like Shrek says, ogres are like onions. They have layers. Well, stories, and every character should be like an onion. It should have layers, and it should be. I call it the rule of, like, someone shared it as they said, it's the rule of 5%. Like, every time, like, your character should progress in their personality and who they are 5%. Too much or too little just makes it, too much is unbelievable to the audience, and too little doesn't make the character very endearing over time. You want to show some growth, and so 5% growth over the course of over an issue. I say like an issue or two, and so that way people are starting to see those new aspects and facets of the character, and understanding a little bit more of what motivates them. So to start out with, we've got this guy Trashman, the big muscly guy down here. We start the story kind of through his eyes, and we find out, like, and people have correctly identified it, which it always makes me happy when people read the books and they're like, oh, that's like this. And I can see, like, his motivation. He has something, like, he's very clearly motivated by one thing at the beginning. And kind of this kind of personal connection. It's not really stuff, but it's his dog. It's his dog. He's motivated to help, to keep his dog safe. And, but you see the evolution of that loyalty to his pet turn over to, like, these are new people that I've just met. But there's a problem, and they helped save me. So now I'm going to help them. So there's this transfer of loyalty. And then the motivation becomes not, look, I don't have a personal connection to the people that we're trying to save, but I could have been one of these people that, but now I'm not. So now his motivation is to try to reunite people. And so you kind of see that in there. And it turns out that this guy's an atheist. He didn't even believe in God, And so his motivation doesn't come from a faith. His motivation just comes because he understands the value of family and of people. And I think that's true, because I've seen people that strangely enough, I've actually seen people that don't believe in God have more morality than some people that do profess to be believers. And so, so I want to put the, kind of those aspects in there, and kind of weigh that out, and let people see it, and then discuss it. And I just want, and when I write, I want people to I want them to feel something. I don't want them to be angry. I want them to be happy, or I want them to be sad. I want them to feel something. I don't want them to be like, indifferent, So I wrote a specific scene at the end of issue 5, which is in this trade paperback. That when I had a few people that they were just hook, line, and sinker with the story. They just had been following me for the last 4.5 years. And so when they got that book, I was so excited for them to read it. I kept it secret. There was only like 3 or 4 of us that knew about it. It was all the production team. And so when they got it, I got a phone call. Like, I was getting phone calls and text messages and emails and Facebook messages from people as soon as they saw this scene, and they were like, "Oh my God!" It was like my guts just got ripped out through my throat. I'm like, "Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know."
Wow,
it was brutal.
Well, I mean, so many things that you're saying, I just totally is where I'm at too, with the comics I make. And, well, at least with what I want to do, I'm still, kind of getting there, but with my writing and stuff. But, emotion, yeah, to me, like, hitting people with that kind of thing, to me, I think, because the reason why I want to do that is because I love stories where I'm moved, and I've read so many comic books where I enjoy it. I enjoy it for different reasons, but very like I actually kind of have yet to really be super moved from a comic book like I have when I've watched some movies or like I have when I've read some books and stuff like that. So I'm actually looking for that experience. So, I'll be that's kind of what I'm looking forward to with comics. I mean, I have had that kind of thing. I've had humor and I've had different emotions for sure in comics, but I really want to have one of those stories that just blows me away type of thing, and so I also would like to do that with my comics as well because I enjoy those kind of stories. Like that's when I really feel like I've been told a really cool story.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I can't say that Hybrids is one of those stories that blows people away. I hope it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
I hope it is. But again, this first volume, it's one of 3 volumes that I have already planned, and
Mm.
so there's more story to tell. And so this next arc, man, I'm already writing it and starting the art with it, and it is brutal. Like, it's one of those things where, you have to make decisions. And if I don't care about it, if the stakes aren't high for me as the writer, they're not going to be high for the fans either. So,
Mm. Yeah.
but yeah, but then
Yeah,
there's,
that's the tough thing is like it's hard to not like you create these characters, you put so much love into creating these things and trying to make something really cool, and then you got to put them through hell.
yeah,
And it's like it's not easy. Like it's easy to just want to be nice, and let's just have a fun adventure story.
yeah, yeah, and be happy. Yeah. Make everybody laugh. So I try to I try to bring those peaks as high as I can get it. Like, let's have a lot of fun here. Let's laugh, and just, hopefully the jokes land. And then when I come down, it's like, you've got to meet on both ends of that. Now, the fun part is that the first arc was, I started writing that in 2015. I did the book in 2016, released in 2016. So that was the first one. But since then, from the last one, my art and my writing has just grown so much. So from issue 1 to issue 5, you can actually see the progression of a creator, of a writer and artist from issue 1 to issue 5. And but I still believe in issue 1. I feel like it holds up. People are still picking up issue 1 and then getting involved in the story from there. They're still, making that transition. So,
Mhm. Is this the first comic you've made?
no, I've made quite a few. I started out early on. The very first comic I made was I did on construction paper with pastel colors, with pastels. Nice. And I knew nothing. I was young, but it was called F-Dome, Future Defenders of Modern Earth. And it was a team-based superhero book where they just all had powers for random unknown reasons. But they worked together as a team to try to defend Earth from, from different galactic problems. And so, I think I should do that. I should write that book again, but do it as a kind of a tongue-in-cheek, kind of just silly, making fun of myself kind of book. But that was kind of technically my first one. But then I worked on a few other ones over the years that if you really dig hard, you can find them, but I'm not telling anyone about because they're that bad. But then I started out with really kind of like getting into it with a book called Worst Day Ever, which I'm getting ready to revamp into small 8-page stories that will be sporadic out through these things we're calling the 3x3s with Terraform Comics, where like you'll get a little piece of the story here or there. And so we'll tell that story over the course of, it was originally blogs, and then I had a writer do like 12 issues, like write 12 issues. And I'm like, it was really long. And it was just supposed to be like a 6 or 7 post blog that I did that turned into a story. Wow. And so I want to go back into that idea that it's these short little chunks of story. And so that was one that I did. Voodoo Nations was recent, but this issue 1 was early on, but it wasn't the first. It was probably the 3rd or 4th book that I really dug into. The 5th, if you count the other crap ones. But yeah.
So did you grow up, being a collector of comics? Like, what was your inspirations and stuff to start doing this stuff?
Well, so my mom and dad used to go and hang out with their friends at this diner called Breakfast House, like all hours of the night. and they had a toddler, so they'd be out till 3-4 o'clock in the morning with a 3-year-old. And I would get bored easily as a 3-year-old. I have ADHD, so imagine how fun that was. But they learned that I like to draw, and so they would just bring me paper and pens, and I would just sit there and doodle. And so I started getting into art and really liking to draw. And then about 5 years old, I was introduced to this thing called HeMan and the Masters of the Universe.
Nice.
Rocked my freaking world. Loved it. Fell in love with He-Man. And so my dad was talking to some friends, about how like I would get up at 5 o'clock without an alarm to watch He-Man as it came on. And so they was telling that, my son likes to draw. I likes He-Man. So this friend brought in some comic books and said, here, give these to your son. Maybe he'll like these. And I remember that it was Mike Zeck's run of Secret Wars issue number 4 with Hulk, and I actually just did a homage cover that I sent off to the colorist to do for, and I put hybrids characters in it, instead of man, I saw that and it just changed my life, and I fell in love with comics and started trying to draw them as much as I could and often as I could. I copied every picture in there until the comic was ruined. I started by tracing, then I moved from the tracing to the can I look at it and draw it, and then can I draw it from memory, kind of stuff. And so it was pretty neat because actually when I did the homage cover, I didn't look at the cover reference because I knew it so well. I just drew it. And so
wow.
And so I was pretty happy with that. And then I looked at it, I'm like, that's pretty darn close. Once I looked at it, I was like, that's pretty neat that I was able to do that. But I see what said, by the power of Grayskull. Yes, man, I was a big fan. So that's what got me into comics. But I didn't take it real serious for a while because there wasn't a lot of people reading comics in my hometown. But a lot of people did music. And so I started playing music because that was a way for me to express myself creatively that people were actually interested in. And it was a good way to meet girls. And so I had met my wife that way. She actually didn't even know I was into comic books until 2 months after our wedding. And so we're living, and so one day I just bring my comic collection home and I bring these long boxes in, and she goes, what's that? I says, they're books. She goes, what kind of books go in that kind of box? I go, comic books. And she goes, what? I had like 3 or 4 long boxes full of comic books. And she's like, I didn't know you were into comic books. I go, till death do us part, baby. Yeah.
I knew that.
Yeah.
No, man. I think that's something you have to disclose your geekiness to the potential person, or else you might get booted.
Never. No. I wasn't about to. There was no way I was going to land that girl with if I was in the. I knew I had to really step it up. She had to think I was cool. So
Nice.
We focused on the few things that I did well. But she's been a huge supporter of the whole comics thing now. Like she is. She actually is the one that came up with the name for hybrids, the sons of gods. I had been toying around with ideas, and I was like, I know I want hybrids in there because it's like the angel human hybrids. And she goes, well, it is based off of the whole idea that they're the offspring of the Greek gods, right? I said, yeah. She goes, well, why don't you just put sons of gods on there? And I'm like, that's a really good idea. So the title came from kind of her inspiration.
It is an interesting name. You always hear the son of God, but not the sons of gods. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's just different enough to get people like doing this shit. Like, what was that? What do you mean? Surely you mean this, right? I'm like, no. And so, yeah, I've actually had believe it or not. So I also do this voodoo book with another guy who's a Christian, and our editor has a master's in theology. But it's called Voodoo Nations, and I've gotten more flack for writing a song. Going back to my music days, for writing a comic that says the sons of gods than I have with having a book called Voodoo Nations.
Interesting.
Yeah, but it's funny because I guess because I've been doing this for 4.5 years, and so everyone knows now like kind of the premise behind it. So if there's a book comes out that has a name that they're like questioning, they're like, I'm sure Luke's thought it through. He knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even with the thumbnail, I used the art from your comic, and it's obviously, like the devil or some form of that, and it's like pretty darn cool looking devil for and I'm like, I have a feeling that this guy might be a Christian, and and it's just kind of funny that I'm putting the devil thing up, but it's like the devil's in the Bible too. So, I mean, it's part of the story, and whatever that part is,
I don't want to give any spoilers for anyone that like might be watching that's going to go by and pick up the book and get it, but it is not the devil. It is not the devil.
For sure.
But that plays into the fact, like the whole, like, though people think that that's the devil, like, oh, you must be Satan, you must be Lucifer, right? That whole thing plays into the next arc, like where So
is this fun. This arc is kind of like a complete story then, right? Like
it is, yeah. So I break it up into 4 or 5 issues, like bunches. Like I want to tell this story and then this part of the story and this part of the story, but they all link into each other. Mm-hmm. And so this is the first part of the story called Trash Day. It's just kind of an introduction into the world. It gives us the answer of who, the what, and the why, and all of those kind of introduction into what's happening. We get to know the characters a little bit better. So it takes place over the course of a couple of days. And so I try to express to the reader, it's like, well, they don't seem real like chatty with each other. I'm like, they've only known each other for like 72 hours. It's like, so they're not going to be like, they're all not chummy. Hey, buddy, how you doing? They're not like doing catchphrases and ribbing each other. That happens in the next arc because it takes place 6 months after this story. So it's like this story takes place and then it launches us into the next story, which is being drawn and written now. So, but yeah, so this is a finished chapter of the saga that will. I'd only had 3 sets written for it, but this week I've been hit with some inspiration, and I have another arc coming after this one, which is going to be really cool too. I was like, oh, I can't wait to tell this one. So yeah.
So you said. So are you saying that you have more than 3 volumes you think you're going to make, or?
We're probably at this point it's looking at 4 volumes, yeah, but 3 for certain. 3 for certain.
And do you have an end point in mind for this whole epic story?
Not really. And it's one of those stories where I've never really wanted to have an end point, but at some point I want to hand it over to someone else to kind of take on and build the universe further. So
interesting.
Yeah, I don't really have an end, but I have a good places to pause, like it's happy enough to stop here. So at the end of the 3rd arc, so either it looks like this next arc is going to be 9 books instead of 10. So either the 14th or 15th book or something like that. It's going to be a good spot to pause for a while and kind of go into something new. So
yeah. So you write and draw the whole thing pretty much. That's pretty cool. How long does it take you to do an issue?
It depends. So sometimes I'll use a layout artist, which speeds things up a little bit if I'm working on other things. So they'll do some layouts and then I'll go through and then change it if I want to, and then do my pencils and inks. But I can normally get an issue done in, if I put it all together, probably a month and a half.
Oh wow!
From the writing to drawn. Now I pay somebody else to color and stuff like that. I can't do all that. If I did all that, it would take me 6 months to do a book. If I did all the aspects of it, but
yeah, coloring takes a long time. I've only really colored one story. It was 13 pages, and it took me forever. So
it's tedious work, and then I always second guess myself on that stuff. I'd much rather let somebody else do it that they're not as personal with it as I am, but then it becomes personal to them. So I've got the same colors from issue 1, who's going to be with me until the end of the arc, unless something drastically terrible happens. But
awesome.
Yeah, he's ready to start coloring pages.
You were saying that picture, the one that you did, that's like the homage. First of all, what issue was that from?
It is Secret Wars number 4.
Okay, and is that going to be like a variant cover or just like a poster print?
Well, we're doing mini posters, but we've also got a tier on there where you can get variant covers. I'm doing 5 of them, and so each issue will have a variant cover. that's an homage cover. So that is
Okay.
available on the as an add-on or as a tier by itself. So
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Interesting. And so another thing too, uh, you've mentioned a couple different things. I think early before we started this, you said something about, was it like different imprints? Like you got the Terraform thing, and then you said something about leadership something, or is that, did I hear wrong or?
Oh no, we have the leaders that we have at Terraform, our Terraform kind of owners.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but no, before this, I started out with a company called Tenacious Comics that I started because no one would publish my books, and so I worked with a bunch of other people that no one would publish their books, and we tried to work really hard to find out why, and we just helped each other make our books and our quality better and learn the process better. We all had a little piece we could contribute, and so that company wound up closing. I wound up going with my other titles just died, and Hybrids was picked up by a company called Starcross Comics. Joe Spicer got a hold of me, said he really liked the art and he wanted to know more about the story. I told him what the story was about, and he was like, "I'd love to publish the book if you want to." It's like, well, I have the first issue has already been released. The second issue is ready to release. I guess we can re-release this with you, and then we'll just see how it works out.
Mm-hmm.
So we wound up actually, I had to take about a year and a half, 2 years off from doing comics because there was some stuff going on at the church that really needed my focus, my undivided attention, and so I did that. And while I was doing that, Joe was like, "Hey, these books are doing really good. Are you ready to do the third book?" And I was like, "Well, the third book it's pretty much done. I just need to get it colored. And so we finished the third book. That did really well. And so then I cranked 4 and 5 out right after it. And because things had started evening up, so I was able to do that. And then it just kind of made sense that I wanted to go back to kind of that model that Tenacious Comics had, where it was people that were all trying kind of at the same level, trying to get into the next level.
Mm-hmm.
But, instead of like on a video game where it's like level 4s and 5s, now it's like levels 15s and 16s, let's partner with some of those people and grind to get to that next level together. And so I left Starcross Comics earlier this year, and we started Terraform Comics, and we're working on our process with that. Of course, COVID's thrown things off a bit with timing and things like that, and then we've had some people with health issues and sickness and stuff in our team, but we are making great strides towards where we want to go. We've actually got a book by a guy named Mark Darden called Guano Guy that releases tomorrow on Kickstarter. And I know a lot of people are Indiegogo only and some are Kickstarter only, but if you are typically an Indiegogo person, please swing over and check that out. We'd like to get him 100 backers, and we're only raising $1,500, but the book is amazing. And if you go to terraformcomics.com, you can go to the store and actually download the issue 1 PDF for free, because that's how much we believe in the story. It is hilarious. It is fun. It's a fun and funny comic that's family friendly. Anybody can pick this up and read it. And so we're really encouraging people to do that. And so that launches tomorrow. It will run for 30 days or so. And then once we fund that, it will go into, we'll slide that over into Indiegogo on demand. So in demand, so that people can, if they don't want to get it there, they can still get it over on Indiegogo. But.
So, if you want to come on again at any point, I'd be happy to have you on, or even that creator or both or whatever, to talk about that as well. That'd be cool.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. But that does sound interesting. I'm definitely looking forward to checking that out when you put it out. So let's see. We have actually some pretty interesting comments here I want to go through. What's up, Pastor Luke Stone? You ooze with excellence. Nice. Thanks for treating my guests nice, friends. This one's interesting. Stinch says Chick Tracts took sanctification slightly too far in some areas.
Yes, they did. Those things were terrible.
I don't know. I don't know how much you watch YouTube videos. Do you ever watch Cartoonist Kayfabe?
No, I haven't seen them, no.
No, okay. They're pretty cool. They're interesting. But they did a whole video about Chick Tracts recently, and they weren't they don't like them, but they appreciate the history of them.
Oh yeah.
It's interesting. I've always seen them around, and I've always been curious. Some of them are pretty interesting. Some of them are, yeah, they go crazy sometimes. Let's see. Free jazz filmmakers. You can't censor yourself when you're writing the story. I couldn't agree more. This applies to any belief system, religious and non-religious.
Absolutely true.
I would agree. I mean, anytime you're trying to like really heavy-handedly put some kind of message into, a story of any kind, uh, I think it ends up not coming off so well generally. And I think it's interesting something you said when we were talking about that earlier. Like it's almost like a conversation, or I think of that as well, like a discussion or something. Like you have people of all different types, interacting with each other, and you don't just like make the things you don't like the bad characters and make the things you do like the good characters. You kind of mix it all up, and it makes it more interesting. It makes it have more realism as well, I think. And I don't know, people are smart enough to kind of figure their own things out, and you can kind of guide a certain message, but there's a difference between kind of playing with messages and kind of talking and discussing them, and then just preaching them, like hardcore in
True.
a story.
Sometimes the good guys look like bad guys, and sometimes the bad guys look like good guys. And
Totally.
it's okay to have that happen because that happens in real life, and it actually makes the story more interesting. When you are willing to address that, like just for example, that the book Voodoo Nations, we were looking at a publisher, and they did more Christian books, and Voodoo Nations, though it's like got a bunch of Christian influence in it, it's still just a story.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, I thought this was the bad guy, because it starts out, this guy Bishop Lucas is like kind of saving this village, and I thought he was the bad guy. He's like, well, he is the bad guy. It's like, well, why is he doing good things? It's like, you're so narrow-minded that think that the bad guy can only do bad things. It's
Yeah.
like there's no tension when the good guy shows up. If the bad guy only did bad things, then that's one dimensional. It's one note,
Mhm.
But when the bad guy does good things, and then the good guys show up to try to say, hey, he's a bad guy, they're like, well, he's not a bad guy to us. He's done good things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's, I think one of almost the keys to writing, bad guys, one of them at least, is, you know, nobody, gets out of bed and says, I'm a bad guy and I want to do bad things because I'm bad. Like, most people who might be considered, bad guys, they actually, even if it's twisted somehow, they feel like they're doing some sort of good or something. They usually have, they're not trying to be a bad person. They have some kind of agenda. Even, I'm not saying Hitler's a good guy, but
But he thought he was doing a good thing.
yeah, he had an agenda that he felt like this is the way things should be. Um,
In the Bible, the
Obviously,
Pharisees thought they were doing the right thing.
yeah.
I did
So
like the change they made with Thanos in the movies, because during the Infinity Gauntlet, like, it was just to impress death. But in the movies, it was like there was some moral, like, kind of a noble idea that what he was doing for the betterment of everyone that would be left.
right.
I like that.
It was he was willing to do something nobody else would do, but it was, killing off most of the creatures in the universe is probably not
Half
the
of all Earth.
best. So I mean, it's very interesting. They actually went an interesting route with that for sure.
I was sitting in traffic one day here, and I was like, and it was so bad. There's so many people in Jacksonville. And I said, I'm not saying that Thanos was right, but I get it.
Yeah, yeah, that's funny. Let's see. Anna said a bunch of interesting things. There's a lot of comments here. I can't go through all the comments, unfortunately. But definitely, you guys got some really good discussions going on here. Um, my buddy Man just stopping in, say what up. What's up, dude? Jason, he's a good guy. They're all good guys and gals. Let's see if there's anything else. Yeah, I don't want to go through every comment, but there's a lot of good stuff in there. So yeah, I don't know. What I'm curious more a little bit about the whole terraform thing. Or, is that like people locally, or is it like people you found on the internet, or how did that kind of come together?
It came from a network of creators that I know on the internet. There are three of us that are in Florida, but that's just by, by happenstance, really. It's not,
Mhm.
that wasn't intentional by any means, but, and the other ones are in Michigan that are local to each other. So it's kind of funny how that worked out. But yeah, we just developed a network and people that we'd been working with online. And we realized that we were kind of all on the same. It's when you're kind of, the best way is to kind of like, have you ever played World of Warcraft? You
I
know,
haven't.
Okay, well, it's kind of like one of those massive, like those MMORPGs where like you're all grinding at about around the same level, so it makes sense to like,
Gotcha.
yeah,
Yeah.
maybe somebody that you used to game with before, like they haven't been able to grind with you, and so they're at a lower level, so they really can't go in the same place as you can. That's kind of how I felt it was. Like I needed to get into the next, I was running a new dungeon and I had to find a new party to run with, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
all of these people we had been running together but not realizing like it was just we just happened to be like, hey, what's up, kind of thing, kind of all in this circle. And then it we realized that if we really focus our efforts together, then we can really make more of a difference. And so we had originally had about 10 or 12 people involved in that first conversations about it, but then we dwindled it down. We've got five. There's five of us now. So
Nice.
um, yeah, so
Yeah,
we're all
that's
focused.
that's an interesting analogy. I have played games like that, so I definitely can see what you're saying, and it's interesting approach to just keep leveling up, even as a group and stuff, in different groups and things like that. That's pretty cool. What would you say if you want to divulge? I'm curious what kind of some of the goals are. Like, what do you guys think you're going towards? With your imprint.
Well, we don't want to just stay with comics. We actually want to help people take their IPs into other realms. Like right now, I have a role-playing game being developed for hybrids, the Sons of
Hmm.
Gods. And so,
Oh, that's
if
cool.
we can hit the 10K mark, I don't think that's going to happen right now. But the goal was if we could get that, then we could pour money into development and getting the printing of the quick play done. But we're having a little trouble. So we'll do that on in demand. So once it goes in demand, we'll do that. We'll leave that open as a
Hmm.
goal. So as soon as we hit 10K, that game will come out and be a possibility for people to get. So, but we're doing that. We want to get into animation. We want to help people, get their IPs licensed in other ways. And so the goal is to try to find these great creators and help make them household names with
Hmm.
people and just help some people that really deserve the spotlight, get the spotlight from people and get the recognition from more of an audience than what they've been getting, help them get that and just kind of become a brand that's kind of synonymous with quality books, like things that
Hmm.
you'll be able to enjoy. And we know art is subjective and quality is subjective, so it's hard to put a metric on that. But like our standards is like so everything meets a certain standard. You know that when you get a Terraform book, it's going to meet this as far as storytelling goes, art goes, and production and print quality goes. So that's really what we're trying to do. That's our goal for the next 5 years. 2 to 5 years right now.
Cool. Yeah. Speaking about, I mean, you're talking about kind of making your creators become household names, as you say. But also, I notice you have a Canaan White cover here. That's
I
pretty cool.
do. It's an exclusive, and that is a household name for many people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool that you were able to get that going. It's a cool cover.
I always wanted it. In fact, Canaan White was the reason why I started getting into digital art to begin with. So I'd been looking at it and was following a few comic things. This is probably 2013, 2014. And I found him on Facebook because we're both in Indiana. And so like somehow there was a mutual connection and friend there. And so I started following his stuff, and he would do these warm-up videos where he was drawing on a tablet. And I just thought, man, it's so cool. I can't believe how good it looks. And so that encouraged me to move digital. And when I did that, I was able to increase my abilities because I was able to practice more. So I got better at drawing, better at doing sequential. I got better and faster at doing everything. So kind of where I'm at now, I almost kind of owe to that inspiration of seeing Kanan draw on his Wacom back in the day. And I always wanted to cover, like I always wanted to, and so I was like, that's it. I'm going to do one for the trade. And I got a hold of him, and he was affordable now, affordable to what I could do. And so I was like, yeah, let's definitely make that happen. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. Cool. Let's see. Yeah, I think we covered a lot of stuff. I just want to once again just kind of go over this a little bit. Once again, can you just let people know where they can find you? And yeah,
you can find me at lukestonestudios.com. That's Luke Stone Studios with an S on the end. .com. And there is a link to this Indiegogo that is up there. If anything that you've heard today kind of speaks to you and you want to check it out, there's a few options there. You can check out the standard cover. We've got a holofoil cover, the red one. It's going to be a holofoil cover. And then we've got the Kanan White, which is exclusive to Indiegogo. We also have the ability to get the floppies in there as well. Like if you don't want the trade, but the trade's going to it has extra content that you're not going to get from the floppies. So it's even better. You're getting some creator commentary. You're getting the Serafina backstory, and you're getting a kind of a Marvel post-credit scene in there as well. And we're going to do everything we can to try to get up to that $8,000 over the course of the next few days. And some other things. I do have the option of extending this a bit, so we're going to try to do that, even though it might overlap with some of the other Terraform stuff. But we have 5 or 6 teams of creators that have done 2-page stories that are really, really good. And I want to do everything I can to get those added into the book. But we have to hit a certain dollar amount to be able to make that happen. So, so we hope to do that. So right now it's 128 pages, which, it's 104 pages if you just have the floppies. So, but yeah, you can get those. If you don't want to buy the book and you just want to buy me a cup of coffee to fuel the insanity, then you can do that as well. There's a $5 buy a cup of Joe for Luke. So awesome. There's all kinds of ways to get popped in there and help out. So
awesome. Well, I think it looks like a really cool project. I'm definitely gonna go through the things and see which one I'm gonna pick. I'm gonna grab something. Looking forward to reading it. It's definitely right up my alley. And yeah, man, thanks for coming on. I'm glad that somebody shouted you out on Twitter, because it's pretty cool to find your stuff here.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me. It's always fun to meet somebody new and to be able to talk comics, especially when I meet someone that loves comics, shares my faith, and kind of shares some conservative values there. So it's nice to be able to find some of that camaraderie. It's very rare in comics to find that these days. So
I know, and not only is it rare, but for some reason we don't always get together, even when we find each other. Like I have met a bunch of Christian creators, and it's just funny how somehow I don't end up I don't know. I've always tried to like see what the glue, kind of get us together, but it doesn't always happen. But I don't know, it's just interesting how that happens. Surprising, actually. But anyways, thank you everybody for hanging out with us in the chat. You guys are awesome, and it was really I think we got into some cool conversation here that can be helpful because I know a lot of you guys are creators and stuff. So thank you everybody. Once again, thank you, Luke, and that is it for tonight's video. So we'll talk to you next time.